Halloween time.
Hello, everybody. It's Halloween, and Tim and I have lost it already. Can you tell? Welcome to If These
Walls Could Talk.
Tim, it's so funny. Our interpretations of Halloween. Tim's scary, and I'm just silly.
Oh, this is actually my costume. I have a rehearsal immediately following this in Midtown. So I just thought, why not?
Why not?
It's Halloween.
Now, I have a question for you. Were you claustrophobic having that hood over your head? That would bother me.
No.
Actually,
I have these glasses that have a red flash in them. I didn't have them on, but that's what I'm going to wear. So it looks like, death standing there with red lights flashing her eyes, and it's very funny.
But it's really Tym Moss. How is everybody today? Tim, how are you?
I'm wonderful.
It's called Wonderful Wednesday with If These Walls Could Talk. Tim and I have both had a wonderful past couple of days.
Yeah,
wonderfully working, which is something that we live. We were both in 50 Shades of Gay, Icavelli show. Friday night at the Copa, and it was a total blast. I had so much fun. And so did our audience. We love what we do. And then this weekend, I did a load of interviews at the Black Bear Film Festival. Most impressive, 4 young women that flew here from Egypt because their film got picked. Tim, they were students, and they were from Alexandria, Egypt. And the thing about it was they made a short film about passion. The question I asked them, like, what's it like for female filmmakers in the Middle East, right? Especially in a country like that. And they said it's very, very hard, but we're really breaking through the glass ceilings.
Good for them.
Yeah, I know.
Especially something like passion.
Because
women are not supposed to have feelings, and they're not supposed to,
Right, following your dreams and following your passion.
Good for them. And that's right on the heels also of that Iranian athlete. I don't know if you heard. Yeah, like, oh my God. But go women, go.
And that Saudi Arabia has opened up not only for tourism, but women are driving there. I always say film is certainly the way to globally communicate and create equality in the world. I know, you believe that too, Tim. Politics aside, you can tell more with a film, and you can bring people more together with a film than anything else in the world. So besides Tym Moss,
because movies usually reveal human condition or human thing, and that's what connects us all. Right
at the end of the day. Now, I got to work with you twice last week.
In 50 Shades of Gay. And also, speaking of filming, we filmed some comedy sketches on Monday night out in Brooklyn. Soon
to be announced. It was very, very fun is all we can say. And we took a really great group shot with Arasiagos and our one and only Alex Scalzo, who you also might know as Satanya Face.
Satanya Face. Yes, and I actually played Wendy's husband.
Oh, you did. You were like,
so straight.
Oh my God. Well, you passed, Tim. You did pass. Now, everybody up and coming, we live stream from PANGEA. Tuesday night here at PANGEA is Kobe Cole's Nouveau Riche with incredible talent. And I am doing a number in it this time. I don't know what number, but please stop on by PANGEA. It starts at 9:30. And it goes on, and I have to tell you, you will have the time.
Right. I was just going to say, Kobe's shows are off the chain. They're always so wonderful. So
I hope maybe, Tim, if you have a minute, I know you don't even have a minute, but if you do have a minute and can pop in, it's always great to see you. Oh my God, this pumpkin and I are out of control today. Let me just put it down.
Now, the outfit that I had on, this one, that is a show called It's Complicated, which is at the Producers Club on West 44th Street. And it's on October 28th, 29th, and 30th. And it's, I think, 4 or 5 short plays back to back. And one of them is one of my all-time favorites. It's a show called Reunion that was actually written with me in mind. And so it's of course one of my favorites. But excuse me, but if you follow me on Instagram or on Facebook, TYMMOSS, then you'll find out, or I'll list the show times and how to get tickets and all of that, because it is in one I'm dramatic, and in the other, with this outfit, it's a comedy. So
one dramatic, one psychotic.
Yeah.
Why not, right?
Absolutely.
We like to mix it up. So
here we are in the Halloween season. That's why I'm dressed in the color of a pumpkin.
And me too. And I bring pumpkins and things. Well, wherever I go, I also like playing with this one.
And we have a wonderful guest today, which we will be right back in just a moment to talk to our fabulous guest, Eleanor Wagner. But thank you for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss. And be sure to come right back for Eleanor Wagner. Yay! So take it away, Wendy.
Okay, first of all, I was very excited about my guest today. I want to thank a friend of mine from New Jersey, Simone Krause, for saying you got to have this person on your show. She and I are from the same ilk. First of all, I found out she was a Bronx girl. But that aside, she is an incredible paranormal investigator. She started a group called Lady Ghostbusters, which is now North Jersey Haunters, because it's not just ladies, it's men too. She is an author. She has haunting series out, which is Warren County Hauntings and Other Strange Phenomenons, Sussex County Hauntings, Strange Phenomenons Part 1 and 2. She wrote, oh my gosh, Tym, you're going to love this. She wrote a paranormal romance. Tym, if you can't get a regular romance, why not have a paranormal one?
Hey, I'll take anything at this point.
Right? Isn't that great? Paranormal romance. And because she's so interesting, she also has a children's series of books. I'm really excited to talk to her because she's going to tell you incredible stories about things that go bump in the night. Please welcome Eleanor Wagner.
Yay!
Hi, guys. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm excited to be here.
We are for being here today.
Yes, we're so excited to have you.
Eleanor, I have to tell you something funny because I was telling her before this show, she was so great. I'm like, I need a picture, a bio. Everything came right away, right?
Yeah.
But for one reason or another, and I have some thoughts on this, I was resending emails to Eleanor because they weren't getting through. And Eleanor's laughing because she understands where that's coming from when you have electronic interference over things that you can't control out there. And that's all I'm going to say on that. So, Eleanor, take it away. I would like to talk first about your books and what made you start writing these books.
I've always been a writer. My teacher in the 7th grade gave us an assignment to write, and I haven't stopped since.
Wow.
And that's when I started writing. It was always horror. I'm with you, Tym. I like the scary stuff. I like to dress up as a zombie for Halloween, not a pumpkin. Sorry, love you, Wendy, but it's just
we think zombies here.
So I grew up reading Stephen King, John Saul, Dean Koontz, so that's right down my alley. So when I was writing that first paranormal romance psychological thriller, that's what I wrote. And it was in the middle of writing the second one when this red light went on in my head and said, why don't I write about ghost stories? Because I love ghost stories. I lived with a ghost in my home as a child in the Bronx. I had a haunted shop in Sussex where I live.
Wow.
Cape May is my favorite place in New Jersey.
Yes,
and
the
first thing I
Victorians.
do... The first thing I do when I'm there is buy the latest book on the local hauntings because it's extremely haunted. So I said to myself, the county where I live is haunted for sure. I know that. Let me put it out on social media and see if anybody wants to share their story with me. It might end up in my book. And that's what started it all. I put in a post on social media and my phone did not stop dinging for weeks. And what I thought was going to be one book turned into a series because Sussex County Hauntings came out. I had stories enough to make Sussex County Hauntings 2. I had an abundance of stories in files for Warren County Hauntings, so I did that one. Sussex 3 is coming out next week. And I will be eventually writing stories for Passaic County, Hunterdon County, Pike County, you name
Pike
it.
County,
So.
Oh my God!
I know. But Tim,
I know.
You know what? that there's so many, like we're all here on this mortal earth, hanging out with each other. We don't realize that like all around us, the space that I'm broadcasting from, Pangea, totally and completely loaded with spirits. That's how I was brought in here. I know that. So,
and you want to know something? People are not afraid to talk about it anymore.
Thank you.
10 years ago, it would have been a different story. 10 years ago, they would have still been like shunned and called crazy, but people don't care anymore. And they're like, I feel things, I see things, I can do things, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. And so if there's one thing I can say for those paranormal shows is that they've actually opened up the door for people to be unafraid and want to venture and explore about their gifts and all that's out there.
Yeah.
What do you say?
That's what I was. That's what.
Tim, you go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's what I was.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Oh, you go. No, you go. No, after you.
That's what I was going to say is that the ghost stories and all of that and spirits and has all been something that the society never really talked about before.
Right.
It was always quiet, but even though it was all here,
it was like you were crazy if you.
And just the fact, like you said, that it has been they've been given permission to start accepting the unknown a little bit more. So now your first novel, you said that was more of a Stephen King, Dean Koontz, more of a fictional novel, correct? So
it's called Dream a Little Dream.
Oh, I love this. Hold it up a little. I want to see the cover again. Just hold it up a little bit closer.
And that is a fictional. That is a fictional account. So
yes, it is.
But then you switched over to more nonfiction and actual encounters.
I did. Sussex County hauntings and other strange phenomena. Yep. And the cover picture right here is of Magnolia's salon that is in Vernon, where your friend lives, Wendy.
Oh, where Simone lives.
Yeah, at the time that I took the picture, it was my friend's store called Shoptiques. It was like a little antique consignment shop. And when I went in, I had actually at the time took her stories down because my team had not gotten in for an investigation yet. And we were going to go and do an investigation because she shared with me all these stories that happened to her. And she ended up moving out because the guy upped the rent. So when the first book came out, I wrote her stories that happened to her and got other people's things that had happened over the years, but my team hadn't actually gotten the opportunity to go in there. But one day I get this message from somebody, is it all right if I give your telephone number to the lady who owns the new salon at Magnolia's? And I was like, yeah. And she contacts me and she says, I know you already wrote the chapter on my store, but I'm in there now, and we have a lot of stuff going on. Would you like to come here with your team? And so I jumped at the chance because I never say no to a paranormal investigation.
Absolutely. Never say no to a paranormal investigation, Tim, ever.
Nope.
So tell us some of the things that happened when you went in there.
It was actually a very sad story. It was believed to only be haunted by the sea captain who built the home. And he has made his presence known plenty of times. In fact, one of the photos in the book was taken by a friend of mine, Karen Foote, but she actually got the captain, his apparition on film. So everybody always thought it was just him. But when we went in there and I went in with medium friends, they unearthed that the two brothers that had lived there in the 1800s, the one who was a sea captain and the other who was like an entrepreneur, battled with personalities. One was good and one was bad.
Right.
And what they deciphered, in fact, my member, Art Peterson, he's an amazing intuitive, he unearthed that there was a hidden staircase. And they found the staircase and unearthed it. And he said,
didn't know till then. Wow.
No, they didn't know it. And he's the one who said there were children that were kept prisoner here and used for bad things. Need I say more? God. And when we went upstairs into that room, we actually found scratches on the door, help engraved into it, and we found children's names written there too.
Oh my!
And we found some old toys from I guess the Victorian era. It was really, really sad. So. Is it true? Is it not true? But I have to believe that it is, that nobody knew about that staircase.
Right.
It was unearthed, and we did find this evidence up on that in the hidden part of the attic, believe it or not. It was very, very cool. Yeah.
My God. Well, firstly, thank you everyone for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our wonderful and fascinating guest, Eleanor Wagner.
Yay!
Oh my goodness. I mean, now, was it someone on your team that unearthed this staircase?
Yes, Art Peterson. He's the one man that has been a part. He's been a part of the group since the very beginning. When I was invited to do an investigation in the Sterling Hill mines in Ogdensburg, New Jersey. This was during my interviewing process for the very first book. I spoke to the president of the mines, and he was telling me how he's a scientist and he's not supposed to believe in any of this stuff, but he can't explain what's going on to him and what's happening with him and his employees and his wife when she comes to visit and all this stuff. He said, why don't you bring your paranormal team in and see what you guys can unearth? And I was like, let's schedule it right now. But I didn't have a paranormal team.
Yeah.
So I was like,
we love you already. We love you already. Never say no. You need a paranormal team? Of course we have a full team.
So I'm going to get one, right? So I've always gone on weekends away on haunting investigations with friends of mine over the years. And I had met Art Peterson and his wife and a couple of his other friends at an investigation at the Burn Brain Mansion in Glens Bay, New York. And I was connected to him on Facebook, and I said, you know what, let me reach out to him and ask if he and some of his team members would like to come on this joyful adventure with me that I had, this opportunity. And then you follow that gut feeling you have. I said, let me ask some of the people that I've interviewed. They're normal people just like you and I, but they're gifted too. Let me ask if maybe they want to come on an adventure. And I did. I proposed the idea to some of the people and they came on too. And that's kind of how the original group was formed. I just kept calling, us Lady Ghostbusters. I ended up calling us the Lady Ghostbusters, and it kind of stuck. But now that we have so many men on the team, because people come and go all the time, I felt like I wanted to come up with a name that was more suited to the paying homage to the male investigators of my team. So that's why we've been calling ourselves the North Jersey Haunters.
Just remember, paranormal knows no gender.
That's right.
So you built your team from your exposure to experiences that they were having.
Right.
Originally, yes. Are you talking about the group of people that I had on the team from the beginning?
Well, originally, but now, after a certain point, did people start contacting you and saying, and I would
absolutely. Obviously, when I was writing, social media is a wonderful way to get that exposure and that connection. So when I asked people, do you have a story? They'd come and say, okay, I have a story about the old Playboy Club, let's say, for example, right? And then I would take their story and then I would put it out on social media. Does anybody else have a story about Playboy Club? Because I'm going to be writing a chapter on it. And that's
great. Yeah, put that out there. That's great.
Yeah. And so then all the time you get somebody saying, no, I don't have one about Playboy Club, but I have one about the old Action Park. Or no, I don't have one about that, but I have.
Oh my God.
So you start collecting these stories. And before you know it, I was having people emailing me. I have something going on in my shop, or they'd send me a video and say, can you have a look at this and tell me if it's paranormal? Do you want to bring your team into my home? And so before I knew it, I was having like investigations pretty much every weekend. I was driving my husband nuts because going out again.
And this is all regionally, right? All in northern.
Yes, exactly. Wow. I mean, I was never opposed to going away, but I live in Sussex County and it's right in my own backyard. So people were writing about Sussex County. But as I mentioned to you in our conversation earlier, I was having people from other counties come. So I was developing folders for Warren County, Passaic County, Morris County with stories that I knew would eventually be books because I thought it was going to only be one book, but it's turning out to be this series. And the people are loving it. I mean, I talk about, with me, I love historical preservation. I'm all about history and teaching people real history. So when I'm writing about a town, I tell you the history of that town and the landscape of life that lives there and the spirits that reside there. And if I have the history on a location, let's just say, like you and I were talking about the Columns Museum in Milford, I'm going to talk about that house and the history and let the people know what's gone on in that house over the years that may be causing this paranormal activity.
But and here's my question then. You brought up the Columns, and you know my experience. I went on quote unquote a ghost tour, okay? And you know, those are kind of, for lack of a better word, touristy, but they're also very real. And I heard there was a ghost Josephine that haunted the Columns, right? And that the person who took us on the tour, Tim Smith, He said
he was wonderful.
He's
He was
great.
great,
And he's
tour
like
guide.
you. I love that you brought up the historian factor, because you know what? A good paranormal investigator really does his or her history work. And Tim said that Josephine, the spirit, she had been pushed down the stairs or fell down the stairs while she was pregnant by her lover and still haunted the columns. And I said, have you had any evidence of that? He said, she comes out to the parking lot. I'm like, get out. Come on. He said, my wife came out here one night, couldn't get into her car. The lights were flashing on and off. And you guys know I'm a believer. All right. I go on the ghost tour and I organize a bunch of my friends. Everyone leaves. My husband and I are in the parking lot, and Tim Smith, who led the ghost tour, is getting ready to go. I have a key fob and I'm hitting it. The car wouldn't open. All right. Wouldn't open. Then I kept hitting it and it finally opens. It was a brand new car I had rented. No reason for that. I get in, I go to turn it on. The lights are flashing on and off and the car won't start. And I roll down the window and I scream out, Tim Smith, you need to come over here. Josephine's in the car with me. And my husband yells out, roll up the window.
And then after you tell me that story, I tell you the same thing happened to Jennifer Ziegler when we were on the tour.
The key fob happened to her friend. Come on.
So that's three. That's three people that happened to alone in our little circle.
How can people not believe in this? So with that story being out there, and this has got to do with you, Eleanor. How do you keep the ghost from attaching? Yeah. Tim.
Firstly, thank you for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our wonderful, wonderful and fascinating guest, Eleanor Wagner. Okay, now ask your question.
So all right, this is my biggest fear, and I would imagine this could happen to you so easily. You're doing paranormal investigations. How do you keep from bringing the spirit home?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I learned the hard way. In the beginning, when I started doing this, I wasn't taking any kind of precautions, and I brought stuff home with me. And how I knew that I did was because I started having sleep paralysis. They love to put me under sleep paralysis. And I've gone on investigations before in buildings, and it's happened to me when we stayed in hotels, but never at home. And I started to have it at home. And it's fine when it's happening to me, but when my kid has been waking up by the same thing, it's terrified. I'm like, I got to do something. So I reached out to my paranormal investigator friends and said, does anybody know what I can do? And they're like, yeah, well, first go through the saging. So I had to sage the house and salt the perimeter, which I did. And then from now on, take precautions. When you go, say that prayer. I have stones that I wear to protect me all the time. Wow. I have a kinseed in my necklace over here. I use... I'm not taking any chances here. I use protective oils. Yes. And when I'm finished and done, I tell them they're not allowed to come home with me. That's it.
It's very important. You make an affirmation before you go.
So it's almost a cleansing process, and you leave it behind.
And since then, I haven't had anything come home. Okay. And it's very important if you are into antiques like I am. If you go and buy something, it's really important that you sage it, because you can bring an attachment home in your... in the item that you brought home. I mean, antique shops are known for having attachments. We did an investigation in 3B's Findery a couple of times already, and they're constantly cleansing themselves of the spirits. And they say that some of them just don't want to leave, which is really funny. We did an investigation in Lafayette, New Jersey at Sophie G's attic, probably about a year or so ago.
Oh my gosh, and Lafayette, by the way, beautiful little historical town. Tim,
isn't it cute?
Haunted as anything. You can feel it when you drive through.
And even the more modernized shops at Lafayette, where this location is haunted because of the land and what was on there in years past. Right. So we did this investigation because the gentleman it's obviously on haunted grounds, and it's bringing in a lot of antiques and stuff. It's going to be haunted. And he says they've definitely got activity going on over here. And he says this mysterious tool, a random screwdriver, the same one, every time he puts it out to sell it, ends up winding up behind his counter underneath, and he doesn't know why. So he brings us in to do this investigation, and we unearthed that his shop is filled with little children.
Oh my gosh.
And he's thrilled that these kids are there because I don't know if they don't have any children of their own, but they felt like they were foster parents now for these kids that were in their shop. And how we knew there were children was we captured their figures, stick figures, on the SLS camera hanging from this pram in the ceiling. Now, let me explain to you that when we have stuff like that happen,
is too for our audience that doesn't know.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. Well, first, let me tell you that this pram from the 1800s was hanging from the ceiling. So we like to debunk things before we actually believe it's something paranormal. So we made sure that when this pram was swinging, that there were no drafts or anything nearby that was going to make this pram swing. And then I asked Margaret Miller, who's a member of the team, to bring out her SLS camera if she could, because an SLS camera is like a video camera, but what it does that's different, that helps you with the paranormal, is it reveals stick figures in the lens when it's shooting. So if I were to stand in front of the camera, I would look like a stick figure. If I moved out of the frame and there was still a stick figure there, and there's nothing there, you know that something's there.
Right, something's there.
So she was literally focusing on the pram, and we could see three little figures hanging and swinging from this pram. And I went and took my my cell phone and videoed her videoing it, because I wanted everybody to see the pram swinging and see the
images,
the stick figures on the camera. So so that was that one thing that we found. Then we also found that there was this young man. I want to say his name was Jacob. I can't remember 100%, but he was like a young man of like maybe 16 or 17 that had died in a farming accident way back when, and he was fascinated with this screwdriver tool, and he didn't want it to be sold. So Corey, the gentleman who owned the store, had promised the spirit by acknowledging it, which I think is great. I think it's very important that everybody acknowledge spirit, because that's what they want. They want their story told.
Yeah.
Right. He and his wife were acknowledging Jacob and saying, we are not going to sell this screwdriver. We're going to keep it for you behind the counter, and we won't sell it. And they said now, every morning when they get in there, they don't know the other children's names, but they say hi, but they greet Jacob by name.
Oh my gosh. So amazing. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is a fascinating interview. Thank you everyone for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our amazing guest, the wonderful Eleanor Wagner. Now, we also have a video.
Yeah.
You had sent us a video. So why don't we take a look at that, and then we will talk about that afterward, okay?
We're freezing up a little bit, so...
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Watch what you're doing.
I lost Wendy there. Okay, you're back.
Try to put it on the hose.
Yeah, not right there.
No, that would be fine.
The spider will eat it. All right, I'm behind you.
Watch the steps.
Cricket will play soccer.
All right, so we
Just
put
verify the spider's still there. It's not in my hair.
we put the cat toy into the crawl space, and now we're hoping to see if it grabs emotion and lights up, because it's motion censored. It was lighting up in your hand, right?
Yes.
I don't know, I just feel like it's inside with her.
Yeah.
You get that impression, right? Okay.
All right, so what I want to tell you is that I want the ordinary listener and viewer out there to know that paranormal investigations can be quite boring, actually. It's really rare. It's really rare that you will get evidence.
That you capture
For me, it's like the camaraderie and doing this with your friends and trying to connect with spirit and get the spirit acknowledged and having this union with each other and trying to solve a puzzle. Like, that's what it's all about. Whether you actually get evidentiary stuff is unknown, and you can go back to a place several times, and we did go back to this house several times because the woman herself is extremely intuitive, and she was like a sponge for spirit. And I believe her home has a portal in it which we all did, the whole team did, that was creating more activity. So that scene that you just saw was in the crawl space because she was terrified of her crawl space. I mean, she actually was hanging
instinctively
like outside the door.
Right.
But that wasn't holding anything back, because if they wanted to come in, they were going to come in. And we had to try and teach her not to be afraid, to embrace her gift, because she was her own worst enemy with the way she was creating this stress and anxiety with the spirits. I said, you commune with the animals in your yard. I mean, she's got like fox all over the place. She's so good with that. I said, you need to be in communion with your spirits too, because they know you can see and sense them and hear them. And if they know that, they're going to try really hard. And if you ignore them, they're not going to stop. And it's just going to be worse for you. The whole thing is embrace it and learn to live with it, because you'll be a lot happier than if you don't.
And acknowledge it. I have a question. I want to go back a little bit. Let's talk about portals. How did you know that there was a portal? Not every haunting or haunted space has a portal in it. How did you know that? What was the indication?
Okay, there were two things that were indications to us. She had video after video after video of orbs literally spewing out of this one portion of her house.
Wow.
And it was like a traffic zone. They were just coming out and walking. And we were looking at these videos that were actually done. She took a lot of them herself, and then she'd had paranormal investigators in there in the past, and they had these orbs too. You couldn't outrule it and say it was dust, because there was a number of videos from various avenues that all were having the same thing happen. So that was the first indication that she was having a portal going on in her home. Then the other thing was, in her master bathroom, she's got wall-to-wall mirrors. You don't do that. You don't have mirrors facing one another, because that creates portals. And none of us wanted to walk into the bathroom, because every time we walked into the bathroom, it was like we got hit in the face. It was like, oh my God.
Eleanor, most people don't know that. So that's a little household tip Eleanor is giving on here. You never, I know about that. You never want to have the mirrors facing each other, wall-to-wall mirrors. And people do that, and it's really bad.
Yeah, because you don't know what you're allowing access into your personal space. Right. It could be anything. Because I know a lot of people can't wrap themselves around the fact that there's a lot more than just paranormal spirits. There's a lot more out there that we're not even aware of, and that we're all just learning about now that come through. And if you believe in possession, and if you believe in demons, then you have to realize that there's things out there that don't even have a name. I mean, some are referring to things as elementals, which I'm just learning about, that disguise themselves as humans. You can see, and they'll look like a human, but you can see that there's something that's off about them.
Wow.
And they come through portals too, and they're quite scary.
Wow. But they're spirits. They are actual spirits, right? It's never a whole entity, like a person that might walk amongst.
It was never human. Never human. And I would never call it a spirit either. They refer to them as elementals.
It's an entity of some type.
They don't fall into a category of spirit, and they were never human. And the one that we actually had experience with, I didn't get a good vibe from it, because it had disguised itself as a little boy. Ooh. And you could tell that it really wasn't a little boy, and it wasn't letting the elderly spirit that we were trying to communicate with speak. Wow. You could tell he was trying to communicate with it, but this elemental wasn't letting him do it. And I was really creeped out, because it was the first time I'd ever experienced anything like that. But, the family who lived in the home, they didn't sense the elemental at all. They only sensed the male spirit and family visits from deceased loved ones. So if that was all...
Yeah, I mean,
for me, that was good.
Yeah.
Wow.
If they didn't sense the elemental, then all was good. They weren't having any problems with anything. They loved their spirits. They loved having visits from deceased loved ones. So it was all good. But I still didn't like the fact that the way it behaved with the real spirits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just didn't like that.
What kind of success have
you for tuning into If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our wonderful guest, Eleanor Wagner. Wendy.
Ellen, I have so many questions.
I do too.
I could do a podcast special with you. What kind of success have you had with electronic voice recordings in your paranormal.
Oh my goodness, that is so exciting. It's my favorite tool. I made my daughters buy it for me for Christmas one year because I loved it so much. Yeah, because a lot of the team members own them. And so over the course of time, I mean, they're always putting them out when we're at investigations, and it's wonderful when it proffers an actual voice on it. I have to say, probably the most prominent story that I have to share on
voice recording.
The voice recorder was we were in a private home that was experiencing activity, and the little girl that lived in the home was seeing spirit, which is very common. Children see spirit a lot. And it was great that the grandparents that lived there with her accepted what she was saying and believed her. But they were also experiencing things themselves too, so they knew that something was off, and they didn't know who or what it was, and they felt like it was one or more spirits. So they asked us to come and do an investigation. And, of course, I always set everything up for them and say, just know that it has to be really quiet. The fewer people there, the better. You're welcome to stay, but let's not have a party. And we show up at this house and they're having a party. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, we got to cancel because there's no way we can have an investigation. I'm like, no, that's okay. We'll leave. We'll leave. And we want you to have the investigation. So I'm like, okay. So we proceed to have the investigation, and we find out that the spirit that's visiting their granddaughter is a little slave boy that lived there when it was an apple orchard way back when. And we deciphered that he was, I want to say beat to death, bludgeoned to death by, I think, the person who owned him. But we don't know for sure who it did, but he died by beating. And he was probably about 5 years old. And he loved hanging out with the little girl. And once she knew that he was there and that he wasn't going to hurt her and he was a friend, when he was asking her to play, he really just wanted to play with her. So that was fine. But then we had sensed another spirit in the house, and we were having a really hard time getting this spirit to communicate with us. And we had the impression that it was a male. And when we said that, they were very hopeful that it was going to be their deceased grandpa. And we were trying to figure out if that's what it was. And we had been there several hours, and we were nearing the end, and we were really about to give up. And we went downstairs in the basement for like a last ditch effort. And when we went down in the basement, we found the American flag on the floor, and all of us kind of like flipped out. What is it doing on the floor? You're not supposed to put a flag on the floor. We like, all of us go down and we pick it up so gently and we fold it and we put it on top of the pool table. And I think that was the thing that clinched the connection with the spirit, because when we found out who he was a veteran, and he loved his country. And so the fact that we were so respectful to the flag, I think that's what made him trust us enough to want to speak to us.
Wow.
And so we kind of said, we were messing around with a regular, ordinary flashlight, because they're very, very helpful. And it enables spirit to turn them on and off, and it was happening. And we were almost kind of trying to debunk it a little bit. Maybe the flashlight's weird. Like, is it not working? And
the battery's not working?
Yeah, one of the team members going, no, I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with the flashlight. It's the spirit. And another member was going, I think it's the flashlight. So we were kind of bickering back. And so we said with the audio equipment that was out, listen, this is going to be your last chance. If you want to say something to us right now, say it into this little mechanism here. And if you say something, we'll be so happy we'll do a dance for you. And so we kind of waited and gave like a brief, quiet time for the spirit to speak. And then it was equipment that the member who at the time was able to just rewind and we could listen. And when she rewound and we listened to it, he said, tell them I'm okay, now dance. And we were like, what?
My God.
What? And we all started dancing. We started jumping around going, woohoo! It was like we were so excited. So, and just before he spoke too, there was like a dog bark. It was like, burf. And then he said, tell them I'm okay, now dance. And we were like, oh my God, we got to go up to the family and tell them that we got this, and ask them if they recognize the voice, because spirit in death has the same voice as they did in life. So do animals. You recognize your dog's bark, right? They are going, I have 3 dogs. Each of them have their own distinct bark. I know which is which. Of course. So I knew that they would recognize this animal's bark too. And incidentally, while we're at it, if you're nasty in life, you're nasty in death. If you're a sweetheart in life, your personality carries with you into the other world. So we go upstairs to the family. We're all sitting down, and we said, we really want you to listen to us and tell us who you think this is. And immediately when they heard it, they knew it was their booby, their grandfather. And they said, and the dog that barked was his dog too that passed away. And everybody like, well, they're together. They're together.
My
and
God.
they said he was.
One,
Yeah, and they said the grandpa was a real jokester. So for him to turn around and say "now dance" was definitely his personality.
yeah, exactly.
And so for us, it was just so thrilling because it was like, oh my gosh, we were able to tell them he was here, and it's not a ghost. That he is a visit from a deceased loved one, and he's letting them know that he's here and he's with them always, and that life goes on. And it was just this. We were elated. It was this great feeling, and the family, everybody cried. It was just a cool investigation that I thought was starting out to be a disaster.
One thing and another.
Now, one thing that I've always heard is that a lot of time ghosts or spirits remain because there's some unfinished business before moving on. Now, do you help spirits move on?
Yes. You know what? There is a division in the paranormal world. Some people like to move them on. Some people don't. I personally like to give them the opportunity to move on because sometimes they've missed the light or they don't realize it's there because they're stuck. And I want to give them that opportunity. Now, here's a really good example. When we were at the Sterling Hill mines for that investigation I spoke to you about earlier, that was an amazing investigation. Very first one I ever did with my paranormal team, but it was probably the one that touches me the most because we were in these caves for 6 hours and I thought I was going to be terrified, but it was the most peaceful, brotherhood feeling of all of these miners working together, this camaraderie. It was just the coolest thing. And there were so many spirits there. We were trying to get them into the light. And there was, let's just say there was a division between the men. There was half of them would go into the light, but the other half for some reason didn't want to go. So none of them went. They decided to all stay because they didn't want to leave their brothers behind. Is that not cool?
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Absolutely.
That is amazing. Now, thank you everyone for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our fascinating guest, the wonderful Eleanor Wagner.
Yay. So, Eleanor, do you think on your investigations, it seems everyone's got something different, a different job that they do. Do you think to do a paranormal investigation, you need to have a medium so the spirit has somebody to talk through?
I definitely think it's way more effective. Now, I've always said, and I've said this time and time again, I'm not nearly as gifted as some of the people.
Yeah,
on
I
my
can't
team.
do that.
But you know what? But I've got my part that I can put in, and I've grown it a lot since I've been doing this. And everybody has a piece of the puzzle that fits. And I firmly believe that you have to have that power of positive thinking amongst you all. Power of positive energy, because if there's negative energy, it's not going to work. So you all have to really sync with one another and get along, and also I would positive energy.
And also I would imagine a clearing of the mind. Like don't allow destruction.
And somehow when you have that clear mind, everybody's piece of the puzzle finds its way to the finished product. And everybody's gift has its way of working itself in, and spirit is able to communicate a lot better with everybody who's bringing their gifts to the table.
Well, it's the saying, you're all on the same wavelength. We've heard that.
That's perfect.
Literally.
I like that. That's perfect.
Literally. Yeah.
Literally.
Now,
yeah.
As we come to the end of the broadcast here, can you please tell us about your books again and where people can find them and where people can find out more about you and the North Jersey Haunters? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Author Eleanor Wagner.com is the route to everything. You'll find all the links to the books that are on there. You can find my link to the YouTube channel, the links to my podcast, because I do have 2 podcasts. One's a live show and one's a pre-recorded where I have paranormal teams come on and we talk about strange and scary stuff. So anything you want to find about me and my team, you can go to authoreleanorwagner.com. and find it there.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all you do. And thank you so much for coming on and just enlightening us in many ways.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.
We so appreciate it. Eleanor Wagner. Thank you. Okay, and that ends the actual broadcast. Now, everybody that's tuning in, you get the good stuff too, because we're going to continue talking about this because I'm loving it.
Well, I'm loving it. And now I'm putting Tim in the hot seat. Tim and I had a discussion. Tim is experiencing some paranormal activity. Can you talk about?
Really?
Oh, you mean currently or recently?
Yeah, currently, what we talked about yesterday.
Oh, okay. Well, I can't remember what we talked about yesterday.
Okay, you have things moving in your apartment.
But firstly, last week I was in Scranton, and it's an old theater. It's
The
one of these huge old theaters that they had redone, and they had moved their sound booth about halfway down where the balcony was. And I was in the theater all by myself, completely alone, because I wanted to go in to kind of get a feel of the thing. And I would look up at the lighting machine, and there was like a projector booth off to the side, clear up at the top. And whenever I would look at the booth, that window, there would be like a movement up there, like somebody
so out of your peripheral vision, kind of.
Right. And I would look up. And from past experience, I knew that was probably some kind of presence. So I just said, okay, it's okay. I'm just in here, running my lines.
Oh, that's great. You did the perfect thing.
I would look by a little bit later. I looked up, and there I could see it moving again. And so when the manager of the theater came in, I said, do you have a spirit or something up in that room? And they said, that's Lawrence. You met Lawrence.
Lawrence was his name. What was Lawrence's
He was a projectionist.
That makes sense.
In the past.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And
wow, I love that.
But here at home, I don't know why. Well, firstly, I had a reading a few weeks ago, or like a quick reading. And someone said, because my mother passed back in 97, they said, put a glass of water out and get a flower, her favorite flower, and put in it. And I got the glass of water, and I never got to the florist to get a flower. So, but ever since I did that, for some reason, there's been
what's been happening.
Yeah, you don't need the flower. You don't need the flower.
Oh, okay.
Just getting that connection. She's probably using this opportunity to let you know that she's around.
Oh, wow.
And I love those visits from
but my mother was never.
Just...
But my mother was never necessarily mischievous, and whatever this is kind of mischievous. Okay. So I don't know, because I don't think it's my mom, but I don't know if I opened the door for something to come in.
But Tim, you said that things have been moved. You put something, or things are falling down too. Like
my roommate lost her phone.
You might have brought something home from the theater.
I never thought of that.
Oh my God!
Very well be. I never thought of that. Yeah.
Because if you never had any experiences before in your apartment, because apartments are a perfect example of paranormal activity. They can be really haunted. But if you've never had activity before and something random happens and you get that feeling it's a deceased loved one, then it's the deceased loved one. But if you're having a mischievous thing and you've just come from a haunted theater, you probably brought something home with you.
God.
I never thought of that.
So what do you think he should do? Get like sage and water and stuff? What should he do? What should Tim do?
Get sage and then light it and start in one corner of the apartment and work your way around. And say prayers and tell the spirit they need to leave. They can't stay. They have to go back where they came from.
Okay.
And hopefully that works for you.
Yeah.
He is not paying rent, has no right to stay.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, no, but it's just been like, I'll go to put on my robe and I'm like standing on it or something, and I'm, what? And it just things like that. Drop something, pick it up, it falls again. Like, what the hell?
And they you know what it is? They know that you're intuitive. They know that you can sense them. So they're trying to get your attention. And really, all they really want is acknowledgement. Every spirit has a story that they want told. And just think of it this way: if you're a spirit and you know that people and you're trying to get their attention and they're not answering, they're ignoring you. Can you imagine the frustration? The frustration.
Yeah. Like, look at me, I'm here.
One question I had was like, you're kind of focused on that region in northern New Jersey a lot. Why do you suppose that it's that area? Is it the history? And why?
It's not just the area. Every place is haunted. I just picked it here because I live here. Right. But every single town is haunted. Wow. No matter where you go.
Is it just because people they die and don't realize they're dead?
Sometimes it is. Oh, like you said, sometimes it's an emotional attachment to something. Sometimes it's a tragic death. Mm-hmm. There are different reasons why somebody might be there. And a lot of the times you're able to get them to move into the light, which is great because that's what you want. I try to explain to them that if you go into the light, you can come back and visit anytime you want, but you got to go into the light first. And if you don't, you're stuck here. And so,
that's really interesting. So when I go, I'm worried about this, Eleanor. Am I thinking
never come back?
So when I see that light, I should just go into it, but then I can come back and hang out.
That's how we get visits. That's how we get visits from deceased loved ones. That's how our family members come back and visit us, and with those little nuances. I mean, sometimes it's like a touch of your hair, or you'll see a cardinal or a hummingbird or a butterfly. And in your head, you look at the butterfly and you go, "Oh, that's my mom," and you don't know how that thought got into your head. It's because they put it there. They're letting you know it's me. Hi.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, some people can actually see their deceased loved ones. I mean, I've had experiences where I've had them in dreams. A lot of people get them in dreams. So you can come back, because that's how we know we can, because we have our loved ones come back all the time. But if it's a spirit or a ghost that's stuck here, it's a different story.
Wow.
Eleanor, do we, as a small child, what was your first experience?
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I was very afraid. I was in that home in the Bronx, and the spirit was only on the main floor of the house, which is where my bedroom was. And
how old were you?
I would see him. I was about 5 when it started, and I think when I moved down into the basement, it was my sister got married. I think I was 10, so I endured it for like 5 years.
Wow.
And I was terrified. Now
was it a malevolent?
No, not at all. In fact, it was a very tall man in a suit. And
he
would walk from the living room into my bedroom, and he would stand at the end of my bed. And I started calling him Uncle Paul. I don't know. Did he implant that in my head? Did I come up with it on my own? I don't know, but I was terrified of him. And if I only knew today that all he was trying to do was get my attention and acknowledgement, I'd go back there now and say, I'm so sorry, Uncle Paul. I didn't know, but I was a 5-year-old kid who was scared. I was scared. So when the opportunity came for me to move downstairs into the basement where it was pitch black at night, I jumped at the chance, and then I never saw him again. But yeah, that was my first experience.
Wow.
Did your parents do anything to encourage your gift?
See, this is the thing. I mean, my mom was the first person to buy the magazine with the Bigfoot sightings in it, or she was, but she never talked about spirit. She never talked that she ever saw or heard anything. The only one in my family that ever talked about seeing ghosts was my older sister. So I knew that we did. Maybe there were others, but that was the extent of it. She never nurtured it. She would tell me, "It's just a dream. It's just a dream." And I used to have premonitions in my dreams too when I was a kid, which was really scary.
Wow. I have those all the time. I write them down.
Yeah, and one of them, Wendy, was so frightening. And I woke up in a nightmare. My mom said, "It was just a dream," and then it came true.
Oh my God.
Freaked me out. Because here I was, I think I was 12 at the time. And I kept on saying to myself, I could have done something to prevent this from happening, which is illogical. That would not have been the case. But tell that to a 12-year-old. So I kind of shut down for a really long time, until the day my dad died. And then he came to me in a vision and told me that he was gone. I was actually stuck on the George Washington Bridge in bumper-to-bumper traffic, trying to get to the Bronx to be by his side, when he came and he told me he was already gone.
Wow.
And that's when I realized, okay, I really need to find out what it is that I have that I can do, and try and do good with it. And I think I found my niche. I think I'm doing what I need to do. So
Absolutely.
I'm giving spirit the acknowledgement they deserve.
Absolutely. Now, see, that's something also you just kind of touched on, that imagine if your parents would have said, "Oh, well, that's a ghost," at 5 years old. It's okay. That exists. Like because we've always been taught,
nurtured it and supported it
aside rather than nurture.
I can't imagine
the
where
abilities that could be developed over a lifetime.
I can tell you from research and interviewing people that those children that were nurtured at a young age are more advanced than those that were protected from it, which I don't think
you're advanced, but the problem is you're taking on a lot of responsibility. My grandmother read tea leaves, my mother read tea leaves. I remember as a kid, knocks on the door, and my mother would say, "Oh, so and so just died." the phone rang, you would pick it up. There was no one there. So-and-so just died. So I grew up with that. But then you go out into quote unquote the real world with people that don't come from those kind of backgrounds. And I think I said this to you before. I know stuff about people, and it's not always a good thing. And Tim, this is true. I can tell off the bat, no matter what I do, what someone's reading me, what they're thinking about me. And then I can't change that. And it can be for a small child, a lot of pressure for them to carry around when you're nurturing what we call the gift. The gift is a big responsibility.
Yeah, and what I've also found from interviewing people is that young kids who are experiencing this for a time, they'll think they're normal, that everybody else can feel the same things. And then all of a sudden they have an aha moment when people look at them strange or call them names that they're crazy. They realize not everybody else can see and hear and do the things that I can. I'm different. So if you have family members that are embracing you and nurturing you, you are protected with your gift rather than from your gift.
Well, and as you become an adult, you need to surround yourself with people, as I said, of a similar ilk, which is exactly what I've done, because those are the people that quote unquote get me. And they'll listen to me. You have to do that. Yes,
now, I've also seen people who get into that almost too much and lose reality too. So there's kind of a balance that one.
And you also have to remember that personalities are involved also.
Right.
So you still have to be aware of people's personalities and how they may conflict or mesh in the spectrum of things. I mean, it's like making friends. You know what I mean? Not everybody can be a friend.
Not everyone can be a friend. We have so many comments on here.
I was just going to say,
do you?
Comments for Eleanor here. Ikavelli says, I love you. Evan Lawrence, our good friend, he says, hi, kids. Jen Adams, who runs a theater out in Boise, Idaho, she says, I love this. And she goes, and Northern New Jersey has definitely haunted me.
I love that.
My good buddy Rick Cook says, great episode.
Oh, thank you.
And Felipe Rose, he was the Native American in the Village People.
Yep.
Oh, that's cool. Hi.
He says nice, and he says his house or his couch is haunted. LOL, meaning my couch is haunted.
Totally love that.
Yes. So, oh my goodness, thank you so much, Eleanor. This has just been fascinating because again,
it was so much fun.
It's something that is not. It's becoming more talked about, but it's just not a common subject for people. It's still kind of considered taboo in a certain way.
Yeah.
Right, Tim.
Yeah.
But
we've made such big strides, though. We really have come a long way. We really have come a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it is a reality. Now, one thing we didn't touch on was Bigfoot.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
In Northern New Jersey. So,
which is kind of cool that you would imagine that there, I mean, obviously I don't know stories unless people come out of the woodwork and tell me them.
Right.
But I've gotten stories as recent as 2019, 2020.
Yes, absolutely. I've heard them.
So if you're hearing these stories, one of them is actually a personal friend of mine. I actually had to change her name in the book because she didn't want anyone to know it was her. But she feels that she experienced Bigfoot. And when you hear that story and how it coincided with a friend of hers in the same direction this thing was headed on the same night around the same time.
Wow.
It can't be a coincidence. What are they seeing? But this goes back to what I was talking to you earlier about, that there are things that are happening that we don't understand. So if there are these portals, and I've heard of like skin, what the heck is it? The
Skinwalker.
There's a show.
Skinwalker.
Yes. That portal that the family has on their property.
On that ranch.
UFOs coming through.
Yep.
Anything can come through.
Right.
So, people think, oh, we haven't gotten Bigfoot, but they're a lot smarter than we are.
But I have a question. They have only had most of the sightings in High Point State Park. That's where most of the sightings and the tracking.
I don't. That might be now because it's so secluded and there's old woods. But I've gotten stories from people that happened in like the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, right around the corner from my house.
Wow.
But then again, you have to remember that, because now it's part of Woodburn Park. But you have to remember. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's
you have to remember that. Back then there weren't as many houses, and so they were free to there were farms with a lot of property and pastures and lakes on them, so they were free to come and go without fear, whereas now
come and go as it pleased.
Wow. I mean, I don't think they're afraid of anything, but I think they just don't want to be bothered with people, so they're going to be as evasive as they can. And I think they're a lot smarter than we are, and I think that they come and go through portals when they feel like it. Some people have even connected them to the possibility of being alien. Some of the stories that I've heard, that they came down on a ship and that they've stayed here, which is possible. I've spoken to...
Again, anything's possible.
Yeah, right. There you go.
You have to be open-minded.
Right, you have to have the scientific mind that of anything is possible. If you don't have the definitive answer, then it's open.
I will say cultures that are not of the United States, in places like Africa and Asia, and when you talk and work with indigenous people, all of the things we're talking about, and the Native Americans here too.
They accept them. They accept it.
It's a complete, total and complete way of life. And
same thing with reincarnation. Reincarnation
Oh my God.
is a part of their life. This is what they accept it. They nurture their kids from time they're young about reincarnation. If some of them are talking about their past lives, they try and find their past lives families, and some of them actually do, and bring them into their family fold. It's amazing that they do this, because reincarnation is real.
Right.
And I think we're only just starting to embrace that here just now.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Well, thank you for everything that you're doing to honor the spirit world, because I think when we honor the spirit world, we're bringing love and joy into the world we're in now.
Right. One parting thought is, so many people, and again, I know I was brought up this way, and I'm sure most people are probably brought up, that when someone dies, it's final. And or they move on to heaven, or they move on to another place. But like you said, I love that analogy that they can go into the light and still come back to visit.
I really love that.
And
that's what I believe. That's my belief.
Right.
And
I like that.
From what I've done, the research that I've done, that's the inclination that I've gotten from what I've learned. So I can't believe otherwise.
That makes so much sense, because like my mother, for example, I don't necessarily feel like she's haunting me here or anything. No. But there are times when I know
that she's with you.
Here.
Yeah.
You know, I know that I can be on the subway, I can be downtown or something happens, and I was like, thanks, Mom. That was Mom. You know,
see that you know that's what it is.
It's what Eleanor said. All of a sudden, the thought is put in your head.
Right.
That's
by
right.
Mom or whoever the spirit is at
accept it. Accept it. Take that as truth.
Yeah. Exactly.
Don't think it's just that inner voice is their voice.
Right. Right. We need to learn. You know, we need to really be teaching people more about this. I so believe it. Our kids don't learn this in school. You know, maybe in cultural anthropology classes, but you know, no one is. It's not a household word yet. No. Hopefully, you will help through all your books.
I hope so.
You definitely are helping.
Yeah,
definitely helping to raise awareness about these realities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you so much.
So great having you on today, and my gosh, what is a good send-off phrase for you?
What would you like to say as a send-off?
Yes.
Let's see. Just accept it and embrace it. Don't be afraid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and Kevin Haas, love you too. I'm sorry. Another message there. But thank you so very much, Eleanor Wagner.
It's been a pleasure.
Fascinating.
Thank you, everybody. And remember, go into the light.
Yes, you can come back and visit anytime.
That was good.